Thank you very much, Che. The scene is June 2006. The place is Ramadi, the epicenter of the Iraqi insurgency. Two very charismatic men are about to meet in a compound on the banks of the Euphrates River. The first man is Sheikh Sattar Abu Risha, a previously obscure, suspected gangster, smuggler, and kidnapper who one American military officer said was more diabolical than Tony Soprano. He is, however, about to launch a historic revolt against al-Qaeda that would change the course of the Iraq War. The second man is Travis Patriquin, a young American Army officer, Special Forces and Afghanistan combat veteran. This is what happens. Sattar and Patriquin shook hands for the first time, exchanging the regular Arab greeting of Assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam, peace be with you, and also with you. As Patriquin introduced the members of his group in conversational Arabic, Sattar looked puzzled. "Where are you from?" Sattar asked Patriquin. "I'm American," said Captain Patriquin. "Yes, but are you from an Arab country? Are you from Iraq? Are you from the north or the south?" One of the interpreters present at this meeting thought that Sattar was evidently mistaking Patriquin for an Iraqi who might have left Iraq when he was a child, came to America, and now had come back as an interpreter. In other words, he thought he was an Arab-born national. "No," said Patriquin, "I am American." And at this, said one of the interpreters present, Patriquin broke into the biggest smile I've ever seen on an American officer. Sattar looked startled. "Are you a translator?" he asked. "No, I'm a captain." "Well then," said the Iraqi, "you deserve your rank." And Patriquin said, "Yes, I think I deserve my rank too." At this, Sattar laughed and said, "I'm so surprised. This is the first time I've met an American who can speak the Iraqi dialect so clearly." "Where did you learn the language? How did you learn it?" Patriquin explained, "I'm very interested in Arab culture. That's why I learned the language, and that's why I came here to Iraq. I want to help bring peace to Iraq. In Iraqi and other Arab cultures, there can be a good deal of cheek kissing and hand-holding among men. And for the past few months, Patriquin had been cultivating a facial feature that he quipped was his man-kiss curb feeler, a thick black mustache. For most Iraqi men, wearing a mustache was automatic, a badge of honor and manhood. An extreme insult was if you were to say, "A curse be upon your mustache." Iraqis literally swore by their facial hair, and to compliment a man, they said, "An eagle could land on his mustache." With a few exceptions, Americans with mustaches were rarely seen in Iraq, especially regular Army officers. For them, a mustache was a quaint throwback to the disco era or Magnum PI reruns. Career-conscious Army soldiers, especially officers in the high and tight mode of West Point graduates, just didn't wear them. But for Patriquin, the decision to grow a mustache was a sign of respect for Arab culture. He knew it would help him blend in with Iraqis and make them more comfortable with him. And on top of this, he was letting his hair grow distinctly longer and shaggier than regulation length. And that added another cosmetic distinction that surprised Iraqis. "You look like an Iraqi," said Sheikh Sattar. "You've got dark skin and a thick mustache." "Well, I like my mustache," said Patriquin, "and I like the way the Iraqi people look and how they dress." To this, Sattar observed, "Your brigade shows me respect by sending me someone who can speak Arabic and who can speak to me directly without using a translator." And Patriquin said, "Well, I'm trying to learn about Iraqi culture. I would like to learn it from you." Still laughing, Sheikh Sattar said, "All right then, have a seat. You're welcome in my house." When the group sat down, Sattar fired off a round of questions. "Why did you come to Ramadi? What is your plan? What are you going to do? How are you going to get us security in the area?" Patriquin replied, "This is the worst spot in Iraq. Our mission is to get this area secure before we leave. But how can we see things from your perspective? What's the best thing we could do to get security to Ramadi?" Sattar said, "If things were in my hands, there would be success. The thing we have to do is build a new military force. Let me use my own fighters." Patriquin was open to this idea in theory, but it's just what the civilian policymakers, American policymakers, did not want to hear. They were here to suppress militias, not to raise them. And from the first days of the invasion, irregular militias outside the control of the Iraqi government were forbidden, a destabilizing threat in a hopelessly chaotic landscape. I don't care if you have helicopters, aircraft, and spies, said Sattar. You'll never know more than the local people. Americans don't speak the language. If the local people don't fight against al-Qaeda, you'll never win. There's no way you're going to make this city secure. You guys are going to destroy this city and make it just like Fallujah. You should let me use my own fighters. Patriquin nodded and said, okay, I can't promise you anything, but I'm going to tell my bosses about your idea. I agree with you, but I've got to write up a report and submit it to my colonel. Sattar beckoned the delegation the American delegation into his dining hall, invited Patriquin to sit beside him, and soon plates stuffed with food appeared. Captain Patriquin announced his host, I want you to put your hand on the food first. No, 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 you were the sheikh, Patriquin demurred. You have to put your hand on the food first. Laughing, Sattar suggested, why don't we put them together as a sign of our peace? In a compound near the banks of the Euphrates River, as pet camels, falcons, and deer cavorted nearby, two Arabic-speaking guys with mustaches dug into big plates of rice, bread, and roast lamb. Soon, these two men would help unleash forces that changed the course of the war in Anbar province and all of Iraq. On December 6, 2006, 3 American military personnel died in an IED explosion in Ramadi, Iraq. Army Specialist Vincent J. Pomante, Marine Corps Major Megan McClung, and Army Captain Travis Patriquin. These 3 young Americans were practically soulmates in a shared passion, which was to tell the world that the war was beginning to turn around. And by the way, they were helping do that. My book, A Soldier's Dream, is about Travis Patriquin and the work he did in Iraq to bring peace to that country. And I'd like to introduce you right now to a group of very distinguished guests we have here today who came from out of town to be with us here today. Travis Patriquin's parents, Gary and Connie Patriquin. May I introduce them to you? May I also introduce Travis Patriquin's aunt and uncle, Marianne and Mike, who came from Washington to be with us today. And may I also introduce Amy Pomante, who is Vincent Pomante's sister, and it was a great deal of help with me in the book. Okay, thank you. I want to thank all of these people, particularly for helping me a great deal with the book, and without their help, this book would not be possible. I first learned of Captain Patriquin in August 2007 when I read an article by Martin Fletcher of the Times of London about a U.S. Army soldier and Arabic linguist who was being hailed as a martyr by Iraqis. In the history of the Iraq War, I'd never heard of such a thing, an American being hailed as a martyr by Iraqis. I also learned that a delegation of Iraqis flocked to the memorial service for Vincent Pomante, Megan McClung, and Travis Patriquin, unheard of in the history of the Iraq War. A delegation of Iraqi sheikhs, Iraqi army officers, Iraqi policemen, and they paid their respects and sat in the front row of this gathering. I had to find out more about who these people were, and particularly about Travis Patriquin. I think that his journey is crucial to understanding not only America's experience in the Middle East, but perhaps what it truly means to be an American. Today I'll address 4 questions and then ask 2 more very distinguished guests to join us and discuss these questions as well. First, what did Travis Patriquin do? Second, who was he? Third, what did he believe? And fourth, how did he do what he did? What did he do? Although he was only a junior officer, through a very fortuitous accident of history, he was the key liaison between the U.S. military and the Sunni sheikhs of Iraq's Anbar province in launching the Awakening, a tribal revolt against al-Qaeda that eventually spread to the rest of Iraq, helped enable the troop surge of 2007 to succeed, and had ripple effects that directly led to sharply lower levels of violence in that country, and set the stage for the withdrawal of most U.S. combat troops in the summer of 2010. Specifically, in the words of Sheikh Sattar, the founder of the Awakening movement of Iraq, Travis Patriquin was, quote, an extraordinary man who played a very, very important role. He was my brother. He spoke Arabic and he looked like an Arab man. He was very humble and friendly. When he came at the start of the Awakening, we needed someone like Captain Patriquin. He was always helping me. He helped us with weapons, ammunition, equipment to fight the terrorists. There were people who needed help, who were in trouble, and Captain Patriquin went there and brought them food and whatever they needed. Once there was an attack when al-Qaeda was targeting women and children, he actually defended these women and children against the terrorists. This was a true battle. He really was very, very important in building rapport between the U.S. and the sheikhs. Captain Patriquin was extraordinary. And I should mention that Vincent Pomante was, throughout all this historic period, was at Patriquin's right hand. He was his gunner, basically his bodyguard, and even his office assistant through this whole period, and played a very crucial role in helping Patriquin do what he did. Who was Travis Patriquin? He was born and raised in the heartland of the American Midwest. He joined the Army on the day he finished high school in 1993. He spent much of his early military career as a radio specialist on Special Forces communications teams. From 1993 to 96, he was deployed to Latin America on counter-narcotics missions. And in 1996, he was sent to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, to study Arabic intensively for a whole year. In 1998, he went to Kuwait on a Special Forces mission, and in 1999, he spent a month in Jordan as part of an Arabic cultural and language immersion program. In 2002, he fought in Afghanistan and won a Bronze Star. In 2005, he was assigned to be the civil affairs officer for a brigade that was deploying to Ramadi in 2006. That put him in charge of dealing with tribal sheikhs at the brigade level, which turned out to be a very important historic job to have. In May 2006, Patriquin found himself in Ramadi, a city that one visiting journalist called the most fucked up place on earth. Ramadi was the capital of Anbar province, a city of 400,000 people, and it was also the de facto capital of the al-Qaeda caliphate in Iraq. It was the heart of darkness for the Americans. It resembled, according to visiting journalists, Stalingrad, Dresden, and the ruins of Hiroshima. Right away, three things were obvious to Patriquin and his colleagues. They had to take al-Qaeda head-on with combat power, and they had to rebuild the shattered police force. There were 100 policemen, and there should have been 3,000. What did Patriquin believe? Patriquin believed that the war could be won, which was a radical idea in 2006. And he was only a 32-year-old junior officer, but he was forming a clear vision of how to do it. He had several ideas to accomplish this, which was that Americans must project extreme cultural sensitivity and humility, and we had to protect the Iraqi people at all costs, and we had to treat Iraqis like they were our blood brothers. Tactically, he thought we should welcome reconcilable insurgents to the negotiating table, which had been flirted with by CIA and other military people on and off, but it had never really been put forward in force. And he also thought that the sheikhs had to be dealt with. Iraqi sheikhs are a parallel government, more or less,